What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and it's time for the Eastern and Western Conference Championships to get started. They get started tomorrow. You're going to notice we're not in the same locale as we've been for the last two videos. I was just too lazy to take the setup downstairs. So we're here in the office, if you will, the location of the 2013 Bridgewater's Finest Movie Awards, to bring you the Eastern and Western Conference Championship video. A little housekeeping before we get started. Yes, my Montreal Canadiens did not get it done, did not beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. Full credit to the Lightning. That was a great series, and especially Game 6, one of the most dominant playoff performances I think I've ever watched. It was just a great game. Tampa played a perfect game basically from minute 1 to minute 60, and Montreal arguably had their worst game of the playoffs. So you put those two things together, usually doesn't end well. And since they've lost, I've had multiple people saying, well, geez, you can't wear that hat anymore, can you? I mean, look how bad they got beat. My answer to that is, if I don't wear this hat now, I don't deserve to wear it the rest of the year. But that was the only incorrect prediction that I had from the second round. I went 1-1, obviously, in the Eastern Conference because I did pick New York to beat Washington, and I went 2-0 in the West. I picked Anaheim and Chicago to move on from those two series. That is the Western Conference final that we have. Also, if I sound a little different, don't be alarmed. Over the last 2 weeks, it feels like I stepped up to the buffet of sickness and said, I'll take one of everything. I had flu, I had sore throat, strep throat, cough, cold, my knee hurts for some reason. You name it, I've had one of everything over the last couple of weeks. So if I sound a little different, a little bassy in the voice like Batman, don't worry about it. I'm actually on the upswing now, but let's get into the Eastern Conference Final. As I mentioned, the Eastern Conference Final sees the Metropolitan #1 New York Rangers taking on the #2 seed out of the Atlantic Division, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Rangers now 61-33 on the season, 276 up, 212 down. Tampa Bay 58-37 this year, 296 up, so the better offense, 238 down, slightly worse defense. Season series here was quite one-sided, but not necessarily on the side that you might think. Tampa Bay swept the season series against the Rangers this year, going 3-0. Tampa Bay outscored the Rangers 15-7 in those 3 games. In New York this year, the Rangers are now 30-18 straight up, 30 home victories on the year. That's a great number to get to. Versus Tampa Bay on the road, who are still only 22-25 on the season as a road team. In Tampa Bay, as we mentioned last video, the Lightning have been the best home team in hockey this year, 36-12. When you can win 3 times the number of games that you lose at home, that's a pretty big deal. Tampa Bay 36-12 at home versus the Rangers, who are the best road team in hockey this year, at 31-15. The Eastern Conference teams in these playoffs have definitely had to do more legwork to get to this point. The Rangers in the playoffs are 8-4, 24 goals up, but 20 goals down. They're only +4 in goals for to goals against, and that's only 24 goals in 12 games. Lightning, on the other hand, are 8-5 to get to this point, 34 goals up, 27 goals down. So we're going to get into a couple of X factors here, and now it's going to be 2 X factors for each team. Since we only have 2 series that we're looking at, I thought we'd try to go a little more in depth with them. The biggest X factors that I see here for the Rangers. Number 1, as I mentioned, the offense has only scored 24 goals in 12 games. I have questions about whether 2 goals a game is going to be enough to get it done against Tampa Bay, who's averaging about 2.6, I believe it is. So, I mean, 2 goals a game, I mentioned it last round, you're almost forcing your goaltender to be perfect. Now, through 2 rounds, Lundqvist's been pretty damn perfect, but you're putting your goaltender, again, in a position, and Montreal did it last round, and the first round, you're putting your goaltender in a position where you're forcing him to be perfect. So I always get a little weary when you put yourself in that position. One of the other big keys for the Rangers here is going to be striking fast and striking first. An interesting statistic that I was able to pull up as I was digging through some team stats this year. The Lightning so far in the playoffs have only a .286 win percentage when they trail first. So that's only 1 in 4, a little bit better than 1 in 4 games that they can win if they give up just the first goal. Now, they had a .417 win percentage on the season, so it's not like they can't come back. But in the playoffs, little bit of a struggle for them when they give up the first goal coming back to win those games. Versus the Rangers in the regular season had an .820 win percentage when they led first. So when they got the first goal, 82% of the time they were winning those games. It translated to 41 regular season wins. That is half of your season right there when they scored first. And since they weren't 100% in those games, logic stands to reason. You do the math. They scored first more often than they were scored on first. So that is going to be a big key here for the Rangers. If they can get the first goal, put Tampa Bay behind the 8 ball early in these games, Tampa Bay has shown a problem with coming back from that. So that's going to be a big deal for the Rangers. Biggest X factors I see here for the Lightning, as I mentioned, they're still a sub-500 team on the road, 22-25 on the year. It's worth mentioning they did get 2 road wins against Montreal, and Montreal was a good home team this year. So they got 2 road wins against Montreal, and they are +2 on the road in the playoffs. So they've turned that negative into a bit of a positive most recently. Again, over the course of a full season, they're still under 500, but they are +2 in the playoffs. So their performances on the road in Madison Square Garden, a difficult building, a difficult atmosphere to play in, that's going to be key for the Lightning in this series. Also, taking a look at the Lightning's offense, as I mentioned, they score about 2.6 goals a game. They're getting that done on only about 27 shots per game. Of the 4 remaining teams, they are generating the fewest shots on goal on average per game. So, 2.6 goals per game on only 27 shots, that's a pretty good percentage right there. You know what else is a pretty good percentage? Henrik Lundqvist's save percentage. Try .944. Tampa Bay, I feel, if they don't get up over that 30 shots a game plateau, I feel like they're going to struggle to get that second goal, that all-important second goal. As we mentioned, New York's only averaging 2 goals per game, 24 goals in 12 games. If Tampa Bay can't get enough shots to get that second goal, that's going to be a huge problem for them. They're going to need to pick up their ability to get pucks on net and get shots on goal, and that needs to improve, I feel. Now, they've got snipers on that team. They've got snipers that can score goals in bunches, you know what I mean? So maybe they can get a couple of quick ones on only a couple of shots, but if we're talking about sheer volume, 27 shots a game against a goaltender with a .944 save percentage might not be good enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I was 1-1 last round. I am 4-2 in the Eastern Conference. And for the Eastern Conference Championship, I am calling the New York Rangers. I feel they have some unfinished business in the Stanley Cup Final, and that's where I think they're going again. I'm going to take the New York Rangers to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games. I feel like this series is even at 2-2 after the first 4 games. Honestly, I think this is going to be a home team series. I honestly think the home team, these are 2 really good home teams, 2 great home atmospheres, especially when Tampa Bay refuses to sell tickets to anyone outside of Florida. I think these are 2 great home teams, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're just going to run the table at home. This series is 2-2 after the first 4 games. New York wins Game 5. Tampa wins Game 6, and the Rangers in Game 7, Henrik Lundqvist with that, what is it now, .972 save percentage in Game 7s or something ridiculous like that. Like, the man's a marvel. So I honestly think New York wins that Game 7, Rangers going back to the Stanley Cup Final. And no, this is not bitterness. I think the Rangers are the better team. Rangers going to the final. There's the East. Let's go to the West, where I was 2-0 last round, 3-3 on the playoffs. In the Western Conference, the Pacific Division champion Anaheim Ducks are going to be taking on the number 3 seed from the Central Division, but the most consistent and, again, still arguably the best team out of that division, the Chicago Blackhawks. Anaheim Ducks on the season 59-32, 271 goals up versus 244 goals down. The Chicago Blackhawks 52-36 on the year, 261 up, 217 down. Season series here was actually 2-1 Chicago. Anaheim won the first game. Chicago won the last two. Chicago actually outscoring Anaheim in the season series 8-3. This was a low-scoring season series, and they held the Ducks to just 1 goal per game in those 3 games. In Anaheim this year, the Ducks are 31-15, excellent number right there, versus Chicago on the road, quite a good road team, at 27-19. In Chicago, Illinois this year, the Blackhawks 29-17. Blackhawks are a good home team against Anaheim, who's actually a slightly better road team, I would argue, than Chicago is. Ducks are 28-17 on the road this year. You know what I said a little earlier about the Eastern Conference teams having to do a little bit more legwork to get here? This is what I mean. The Ducks in the playoffs are 8-1. They've only had to play 1 extra game. That was in the second round. 35 goals up, 18 goals down. The Blackhawks in the playoffs are only 8-2, so they've only had to play 2 extra games. 32 goals up, 28 goals down. X factors here for the Ducks. The Ducks are among the best special teams in these playoffs. 31% power play, which leads the NHL, as well as an 87.1% penalty kill. Chicago's really struggled on the penalty kill this playoff. They're only 72.7%. So they're going to have to play extremely disciplined. If Chicago gets into penalty trouble, gets a couple of calls, gets in the box a couple of times, Anaheim could really take advantage and could really blow a game out of the water. Both of these teams have 3 top 10 playoff scorers this season so far, but when I take a look at these teams, the Ducks team defense is far superior there. We mentioned the 87.1% penalty kill, but they're only allowing 2 goals against per game, and they're only giving up 26.6 shots against per game. Anaheim playing very disciplined, whole team defense. They're getting the goaltending that they need. Anaheim's been very complete so far these playoffs. Biggest X factors I see here for Chicago. The Hawks, this playoff anyway, have had a real problem with preventing scoring opportunities. As I mentioned in the last video, they were outscored in the first round, and they have the second worst shots against per game in the playoffs. They're giving up well over 30. Is that going to catch up to them? Against a team like Anaheim, it definitely can, unless Corey Crawford is going to play completely out of his mind. Now, Crawford played significantly better in round 2. We didn't even mention Scott Darling's name, really, in the second round. But if his team's going to give up 35 shots a game to Anaheim, that's going to be a problem. But we haven't discussed the biggest X factor for the Chicago Blackhawks. Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. I want you to listen to these numbers, and I want you to let them soak in. 7 playoffs together, just these 2 players. Nearly 200 playoff points between the 2 of them. Kane leading the way there, as well as 19 game-winning goals. Now, what does that mean? I'm just sitting here shooting stats at you out of my mouth hole. But 19 game-winning goals. That's 19 playoff games. Now, yeah, granted, they've gone to a couple of finals. They've won a couple of cups. These 2 players are the definition of clutch, and they've done it all together. Kind of with this core, but also kind of not. Patrick Kane has scored a goal to win a Stanley Cup. These guys have been there before. They know it. It's not just a matter of experience, but it's also a matter of performance. And when it comes to playoff performance, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, you don't get much better than that. This is the series that I went back and forth on. This is the one that I didn't really know which way I was going to go with it, because honestly, I just didn't. Like, I could legitimately see this series going either way. Like, outside of a sweep by one team, I don't think there's anything that would really surprise me. My original prediction for this series was Anaheim in 6. That prediction has changed 4 times in about 10 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, I was 2-0 in the Western Conference last round. I am 3-3 overall in the West. my official prediction for the Western Conference Final. The Chicago Blackhawks will defeat the Anaheim Ducks, in my prediction, in 7 games. I know, I'm that guy. I have both the finals going to 7 games to make them as epic as they possibly can, but there it is. I think this series is tied at 2 games after the first 4, but I think each team is good enough on the road that they can steal one of those home games from their opponent. I like Anaheim to win Game 5 at home. I like Chicago to win Game 6 at home. Game 7 in Anaheim, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Corey Crawford, Duncan Keith. I like the Blackhawks on the road in Game 7 to beat Anaheim and move on to the Stanley Cup Final. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is my predicted Stanley Cup Final. The matchup of the 2 best goal songs in hockey. Who is your Stanley Cup finalists? Tell me who you think is going to win the Eastern Conference, who's going to win the Western Conference, and tell me who your Conn Smythe frontrunner is so far. We like to talk about this every year. Is it Corey Perry? He's leading the NHL in scoring. Is it Tyler Johnson? He's got the most goals. Is it Henrik Lundqvist, who's basically just killing it between the pipes? Who is your Conn Smythe Trophy winner? Put all that information in the comments section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we will see you again for the Stanley Cup Championship prediction video. Peace out.